Taking on the challenge of Player671 versus Longer. We can go ahead and take a look at Player671 right off the bat. He's got Mage, Priest, Shaman, and his Warlock has been banned away, and that Warlock was an even Warlock, and here we can see him getting ready for this series. He's the other player from the European region alongside Jarla, and we just saw actually Dr. Jikaninki take a win over Jarla, so Player671 is the last hope for Europe in making the semifinals here.
Oh, it's a European last hope. I like it.
And his opponent from China, we have Longer with Priest, Paladin, Shaman, and the Mage banned away. We saw Mooner winning his match early on, so China already has one player through to the semifinals, but they're going to go for that 2-4-2. And the Mage having been banned away, that's just your standard aggro Mage, similar to the ones that we've seen so far. Nothing too crazy there. And then we can see for Player671, he also has an aggro Mage. He's got a very similar Priest, actually, to the Priest that we just saw from Jarla. Dragon-style Priest with Inner Fires and Divine Spirits, and that didn't work too well for Jarla in the previous series.
Yeah, Jarla had a bad matchup when he played against Dr. J with that deck, but, I wonder if Player671 and Jarla worked, a little bit together on their decks.
Maybe.
Because they're both from Europe, they're both from similar regions, and I think somewhat of a similar lineup. Not really. It's only that Priest, I guess, but they were the only two players to bring that Priest. So
the deck that I'm really looking at from Player671, he's brought Shutterwalk Shaman. That is not an even Shaman. It is straight up a wild Shutterwalk Shaman. 2 copies of Doppelgangster, because obviously Saronite Chain Gang was changed in the way that it operates, so you can't play that anymore. But Doppelgangster still does duplicate the Shutterwalk. Zola the Gorgon, Life Drinkers, Antique Healbot, Lotheb. This deck is sick. Not at all what I expected to see, because I ran up to Legend on Wild Ladder last season as well, just in case they didn't ask me to cast. But I never once saw this deck on Ladder at all.
Yeah, this is weird stuff. I don't even know what will happen when I see a Shutterwall come down. You're not used to seeing like a Lotheb pop off.
Yeah. No, I did play this a little bit. I tried it because I'm a big Shutterwalk fan. Obviously, we couldn't play it in Standard anymore. The Lotheb is nuts. It's insane. If you play multiple Shutterwalks in a turn, you're locking your opponent completely out of playing any spells. You're healing with with not just the Life Drinkers, but with the Antique Healbots as well. Doppelgangster makes 2 additional copies of Shutterwalk, whereas Saronite only makes 1. It's a deck that still can be somewhat inconsistent because you are relying on the correct order of your Battle Cry activations. But in the right meta, it would be really powerful. I will say, I don't think this is the right meta for it whatsoever. I think Player671 was looking very much for his opponents to play control decks. This would be phenomenal against Warrior, for instance, Control Warrior.
Oh, yeah. I think you don't even see any Brewmasters in this, right? He just makes a board. Mm-hmm. And Lotheb blocking stuff down. That's going to be pretty cool to see. I guess there's still a Grumble.
Yeah, you've got the Grumble and the Zola.
Yeah.
So it's likely you get the copies, but maybe you don't even necessarily need them. He does have 2 Healing Rains for a little bit of life gain there, but no Lightning Storms. And in general, Shutterwalk Shaman can struggle against aggro. If it doesn't get the right removal that it needs, it's a very fragile deck. It can do it all, but it is really, predicated on having the right cards at the right time, and you're just not always going to have access to them. We are going to see 1 copy of Spirit of the Frog, though, to maybe try and smooth out that curve a little bit. But other than that, he's just got the aggro Mage and that same Priest deck that we saw Jarla piloting in the previous series. For Longer, it's going to be a bit more aggressive. He has just an odd Paladin, pretty standard stuff. His Priest is a Reno Priest, the 1 Reno deck that we have in the tournament. And then for Longer, it is an even Shaman, which we're going to see kicking things off here. And Player671's Dragon Combo Priest will be his lead deck. What do you think about this matchup? Obviously, we did just see something pretty much exactly this.
Yeah, I was talking with Dan about this. I personally don't like this matchup for Priest at all. I feel like Shaman takes over the board too quickly. Even Shaman's always my pick for like the most specialized like board control deck. That's basically what this deck does. It takes over the board. Doesn't necessarily kill you that fast compared to decks like Rogue or Pirate Warrior.
Yeah.
It's really specialized at taking over the board. And for a deck that like Priest, which is really based on winning the board first before comboing off, it's pretty bad. Something to note I saw Player671's cam, and when he saw the matchup after the mulligan, right when the mulligan started, he let out a little sigh here. So,
so he's probably not too happy about this one either. I mean, Priest has some of the best removal in the entire game. And in Wild, you have access to even more removal. You have Light Bomb, for instance, which is just insane. But he's not playing any of those cards. He's really relying very heavily on the 2 Duskbreakers to deal with early aggression and clear up the board so then he can drop down, a Twilight Drake after that. And Longer's early game is not nearly as weak to Duskbreaker as other decks may be. Totem Golem's got 4 health. You're going to be ramping up to that thing from below, so that comes down before a Duskbreaker would. And it's just not nearly as fragile of an aggressive deck as a Rogue would be.
Yeah. One thing that Player671 has for going for him is the turn 1 Northshire. That's one of the most. It's the only opening you can have that does something proactive, especially against decks that kind of suffer at killing the Northshire very fast. He got he got 1 card off of it and basically traded for the entire Jade Claws, including the Jade Golem. So got quite a lot done there. Another one of these kind of awkward hands for Shaman.
Yeah.
See a lot of situational stuff.
This one's just a little bit slow. Obviously, players having to figure out what do I put into my Even Shaman now that Flame Tongue Totem costs 3 mana. And Longer has opted for 2 copies of Whirling Zap-O-Matic. He's got a Wind Fury in the deck as well, but most players, I think, were main decking a copy of Wind Fury even before the nerf to Flame Tongue Totem. So he's just decided to pop in a minion that can maybe make up for the damage loss that comes with not being able to play the Flame Tongue Totem. But it is also a minion that is really easy to clear up with a Duskbreaker, for instance, if it was there.
Whirly's one of the most iconic old school Shaman minions. He's definitely had his fun in the sun.
Oh yeah, that's one that I have missed quite a bit. Power Mace with Whirling Zap-O-Matic, and in the mech era of Hearthstone was just, well, I guess the first mech era of Hearthstone. We're kind of living in the second.
Oh no. Well, Longer still has an it's all these Maelstrom pros are actually pretty good here with his spell power totem. So nice of him to get the early spell power. There's a chance that he could go for a double Maelstrom here to clear the board. It's going to be quite weak to Duskbreaker if he decides to go for that line. Another thing he can do is just coin plus thing from below. This builds the board kind of wider for his Sea Giant, as well as leaving up the opponent's board, maybe helping the Sea Giant a little bit as well. So,
and you generally want to hold on to at least 1 copy of Maelstrom Portal to use alongside Devolve. There is going to be some small stuff that Player671 is still playing that is weak to Devolve, and then Maelstrom can go ahead and clean it up. Longer knows that Player671 has a dragon in hand. He might think that, maybe it's a Duskbreaker, and maybe he needs to play around it. Obviously, we can see it's just a Draconid operative, and Player671 actually can't play it just as a 5/6 right now because he needs to have activations in hand.
Yeah, I actually like this use of early Interfire. This is a matchup, as you see from last game. If you hold off too long on your Interfires and Divine Spirits, you can easily just never find the time to use them. So going to use one early game for board control, realize that he just has to, win the board early. It's actually it's both the best way for him to play his own deck and the best way to stop even Shaman. Is to just keep him off board as well. So. Too bad he's kind of punished by this double Maelstrom line. It's such a powerful swing tool here. Longer just completely takes over the board with this line.
And reasonable 1-drops there too. The Crystalline Oracle is going to get Longer a card from Player671's deck. The Dragon Egg, if Duskbreaker comes out, will spawn that 2/1 Whelp when the Dragon Egg takes damage. So not bad.
Yeah, this Massive Spell though is actually the perfect 4-drop for these weird little eggs and Crystalline Oracles.
Ooh.
Wow. Oh, that's a pretty good pickup.
Yeah, that's fantastic. If
Can that kill a Sea Giant? How much damage does that do?
It does 7. So the Crowd Roaster plus the Nether Spite can clear the Sea Giant.
Okay, it's just enough with the addition of the little 1/3 doing his job.
Yeah, the first Nether Spite Historian wasn't great for player. I think he just got the Twilight Whelp off of it. Second one significantly better.
Yeah, I think Player671 is going to want to take out the Sea Giant here, and because of the change to Flame Tongue, all these 1/1s and 0/2s, especially if they're silenced, they don't actually do anything. What's weird is, do you even think it might be a downside for Longer that he has all these what's a silenced Taunt Tome do? What's a silenced other I forgot the name. Spell Power Tome.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that they're really accomplishing right now is being totems for a Dry Knight Totem Carver. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, they're not playing, Direwolf Alpha, for instance, which we're seeing even Shamans in Standard play because there's just not as many good even options in the deck.
Yeah. Player671 didn't even go for the crowd roaster. He decided to just develop his own board.
He's getting quite punished here by the Devolve because Longer does have the follow-up for it, specifically that second Sea Giant and a piloted Shredder, which not always is seen in even Shaman, but that's a nice blast from the past whenever we do get to see it. And spell damage does not affect the crowd roaster, so Player671 is still going to have to trade over here. But at least he's able to remove that Sea Giant. That's the big deal. This board looks scary because there's so much stuff on it, but it's really not. Longer can't find Bloodlust. He doesn't have Flame Tongue Totem. These totems are just silenced 0/2s. They're not doing anything.
Right, there's only effectively 2 minions here, and one of them is already a swap. It's already swapped down to 2 attacks. So Longer's actually almost out of stuff here. If you look at his hand, he's down to 1 Whirly. But his board, with the addition of this Gen, it's still 3 pretty big minions. So Player671 needs to find a way to deal with these, 3 specific minions. Maybe some taunts would do it. Some big taunts.
Yeah, maybe.
This one's huge.
Were you a big Crackle player back in the day, Strife?
I personally didn't like Crackle. I was not very into aggro in general, and I didn't like how, if you played slower decks, I didn't like how Crackle could very likely blank because you're often crackling minions as a control player.
All right, we're in the same boat then. Crackle never hits for 6 for me like it just did for Longer. Crackle hits for 3, and then I'm wondering why I bothered to play the card. It's pretty hit or miss.
Yeah. Oh, does he take this trade?
I would tend to get a bit greedy here and probably not trade, but Longer is ahead right now, and he knows that, if there's maybe double Divine Spirit plus Inner Fire in hand for Player671, then there is a chance that he could still fall behind, so might as well play safely.
What do you think about Longer's decision to play Totem Golem over Whirling Zap-O-Matic? I think it's the play around Dustbreaker, but he's kind of getting really low on cards where, he's going to need a kill soon.
Yeah, I think maybe it's a little bit too defensive. Even if Duskbreaker is played, it would just clear up all of the dead weight on the board and the Zap-O-Matic here. So maybe that was the right time for Longer to go ahead and play it.
Yeah, really good pickup by Longer, finding one of his Flamewreath Faceless. Player671 actually picked up his own Flamewreath Faceless, so that's quite a strong board. So Player671 has a Divine Spirit Inner combo in his hand. That's possible that he uses it on, say, the Operative, getting him a 12/12 here. Still not threatening lethal, but this Priest Hero Power is actually holding down the fort very well, countering, maybe most of the damage of Longer's board just by healing it up.
Yeah, the fact that Player671 top decked the Draconic Operative there to be able to play one of them and actually have that activation was really, really important because he was tapping the well pretty dry up until then. And now with the Cabal Talon Priest pickup, this Flamewreath Faceless can hit face for 20 if Player671 wants to. I mean, he's seen one devolve already. Longer is not playing Hex, so taunt minions, obviously, or devolve would be the only thing that could actually stop that.
This has to be the right line, right? Okay, so Longer, since his Taunt Totem is silenced, he doesn't have ever the potential to roll another Taunt Totem, and he knows that Longer has 0 cards in hand. I think you just go for the 20 here. You don't actually die to anything, right, at 21 with... I believe so. Let's do a count here. 13, 15 damage. He needs a 6 damage Crackle to win.
It would be
23.
7,
so
10,
8
13,
damage.
15. Wind Fury's in the deck as well.
Oh, okay.
So he would have
14.
Still not died to that. It would have been 22.
Yeah, one off for the Wind Fury.
Calculated. Good stuff. And clearly we can see Longer cannot stop this Flame Wreath Faceless from hitting him in the face again. So Player671 looked like he was running down to his very last resources there, but he is going to manage to take game number 1. And that's a matchup that you said, Strife, you really don't like for the Priest, but it certainly looked a lot better for Player than it did for Jarla in the previous series.
Yeah, all the Discover cards go a long way to, grinding out that matchup in the long run, especially in the Wild format where you have, Draken and Operative, another Space Historian, you have another one, Fire Tree, the Fire Tree 2/2 guy. So you have so many big Discover minions, and I think those cards definitely, what won Player671 the game in the end was Longer's own Flame Wreath Faceless.
Yeah, that's a big shame. I mean, there were some really well-timed draws there for Player671, making sure that he had the dragons necessary to continue having those Battlecry activations, and then, of course, picking up the Draconid Operative right when he did to be able to play the Operative and find the Flame Wreath was really, really well-timed. I personally am surprised that we're seeing 2 of these list of Priest in the tournament, because it's not something that I've seen that much on Wild Ladder. It's not something that's been nearly as popular as, a Barnes Resurrect style of Priest deck, but it does have a lot of merit, I think, and certainly it worked out well for Player671 here. So he's going to be left with his aggressive Mage deck and with Shutterwalk Shaman. I'm very excited to see how that one turns out. Whereas Longer, he's still going to have to pick up a win with the Even Shaman, but Even Shaman against Aggro Mage is okay for the Shaman. I don't hate that one. It can just race the Mage. And, hopefully Ice Block doesn't come at the right time. Player671 is only actually running 1 copy of Ice Block, so that could be a little bit of wiggle room that the Shaman needs.
Yeah, I think the Shaman actually got nerfed a ton with Flame Wreath, Flame Tongue Tome gone, because that was one of the ways where you can absolutely roll over the Shaman when you get a couple of early minions, and then when they start playing their bigger minions like the 5/5s, the secret guys, you just trade off your board and you instantly basically you don't take any damage. Now it seems like it's a lot harder. That was always one of the strongest Shaman cards. So to see them nerf it is a bit of a shame for Wild here. Yeah,
it definitely, as one of the most powerful cards in the class, I can understand why you would want it to go to 3 mana, but the fact that we are going to have Gen and Baku around for another year, and that one of the best Gen decks, and really the only viable Shaman deck right now in Standard, has been nerfed that hard, is a little bit rough. But we are going to see Player671 bring out the Shutterwalk Shaman here, and Longer is going to move over to just an odd Paladin. Nothing crazy, but really, really effective in Wild with the addition of Muster for Battle and Quartermaster, which you can see there.
Oh, I'm very excited to see this matchup. These are some of my favorite decks in the tournament. I love the old, Muster, Quartermaster stuff. Luckily for Player671, he has probably the best card in his deck against this Paladin, being Maelstrom Portal here. I personally like timing Maelstrom Portal exactly on turn 4. Again, right before the potential Quartermaster.
Yep.
That way you can clear as many 1/1, as many Silver Hand recruits as possible, so that you don't get blown out. I believe that is what he's gonna do here.
This is a really solid hand for Player671. Shutterwalk Shaman in the early turns just wants to draw cards as fast as it possibly can. You need to find the correct removal at the right time, so Volcano in this case, he's going to need to find those combo pieces, but really this isn't necessarily a matchup where the Shaman needs to, OTK with Shutterwalk to actually win the game. They're just going to want to survive. So getting to Hagatha on turn 8 and clear the board, really important. Finding Volcano, finding Healing Rain, and just eventually grinding Longer out of resources is probably going to be the way that Player wins this one.
Yeah, one of the best things for Longer early is if he can find some minions that survive Maelstrom Portal, and this is kind of like one of the hands where he doesn't. Playing a 3/3 here would kind of like leverage his board to play around multiple types of AoE where he doesn't just get wiped by one Maelstrom. At least his competitive spirit is maybe forcing an early Maelstrom here. Player, I think the deck lists are open at this point.
I think so.
So there's only 1 copy of competitive spirit in Longer's deck as his only secret. So he knows that Player671 knows his competitive spirit, forcing the early Maelstrom before turn 4. No longer has a potential where he just pumps the board with a ton of recruits again. For this Quartermaster. So that was actually a really good pickup for the competitive spirit line there.
Yeah, it's really honestly kind of interesting that Competitive Spirit even makes the cut in this deck, because it was a fine secret back when these cards were standard, but it wasn't one that really, blew the roof off. It was okay. Not nearly as good as Avenge. Player671 is going to proactively devolve here. That does transform the recruits into other 1/1 minions here: Tiny Finn, Snowflipper, Penguin, and Wisp. But personally, I thought he was going to wait to devolve until after the Quartermaster hit.
I love it, actually. It's just not a line I would have thought of, because you're basically transforming 1/1s into 1/1s.
Yeah, you're not taking any damage off the board, but you are kind of taking damage off the board.
Yeah, I mean, he would have Player671 would have taken so much damage from this Quartermaster if those were all recruits. I think an extra 10 damage, so that's actually a line that's might have just, saved him the game here. 10 damage is probably a little bit too much to come back from. Longer still has the Fungal Master, so that's the thing about Odd Pally, is you always have like kind of different lines. If they do something like this, you can just pump with Fungal Mancer. There's so many options to pump up your minions in this deck. So,
well, this probably renders the Quartermaster kind of useless for the next few turns. I mean, Longer isn't going to want to play it until he can actually generate some more recruits, and that's going to come from usually it would come from Vinecleaver, but he's not actually playing Vinecleaver in his deck, so he's just going to have to hero power for it, or find, I guess, a Champion's Maul. There's not really much he has, actually, that can generate recruits in deck. But Player671 now, going into turn 5, this is when he would love to have a Volcano. He does not, however, so he's going to have to start picking apart this board, maybe with the use of his minions. He could have played the Doppelgangster this turn, but potentially he could have been dead if he'd done that. So the Antique Healbot's going to be a little bit more defensive, but also now he's still really desperately looking for that Volcano.
Yeah, this line from Longer is actually very interesting, because he obviously could have killed the Mana Titone with a 3/3, and there's no way that just to push 3 extra face damage. The reason why Longer, when face is to basically play around Volcano, I didn't actually do all the counting, but sometimes you want to leave up Shaman totems on the other side of the board, because it can make Volcano not clear the entire board. Yeah. It's actually bad for Shutterwalk Shaman to have some totems often. So yeah, that's a cool line. I like that, just continuing this line, going all face. Realizes that Player671's out here is Volcano. Even not having it last turn doesn't mean anything, because in order for Player671 to come back this game, he probably still needs a Volcano top deck, or else this board's just not going away. So just continuing to go all face here, making the Volcano a much weaker pickup if he does find it.
And there's 18 life on the board represented, so Player671, even if he found Volcano, it wouldn't full clear the board and may potentially just leave the necessary damage up for Longer to win the game. But now it's going to have to be a Farsight for that out, and he picks up Hex. That is not going to be enough.
Yeah, Healing Rain can push Player671 to 22, I believe. Is that enough with
16 damage it looks like Longer has right now. So not quite, but very close.
He does have a Quartermaster, but actually there's no way for him to trade off any of his minions, so Longer can't actually play anything in his hand. It's simply too full. Gonna go ahead and make another round of all face probably and see what happens again.
It's a pretty straightforward game plan from the Odd Paladin, especially in this matchup. Be as aggressive as you possibly can, force the Shaman to have the removal it needs, and if they don't have it, you win.
Yeah, Maelstrom is another potential pickup here that can maybe buy Player671 another turn in combination with some other things. Like a Hex Maelstrom. It's very close. Not quite there yet. It doesn't have it, so doesn't look like he has anything.
Yeah, there's
double hex your own.
If he'd rolled Taunt Totem, he could have double hexed, and there would have been only 5 on the board, I believe. So there was still maybe a small chance for him there to be able to come back, but just not having the removal at the right time. And that's even with a proactive devolve, that's with a Maelstrom portal. It was a pretty solid hand from the Shutterwalk Shaman, but when you're not running Lightning Storm, when you don't have Wild Pyromancer, you're just lacking the necessary removal that you need to really deal with that matchup unless you have the perfect draws.
Yeah, it seems like Player671's Shutterwalk has a lot of anti-control tools. I mean, the deck is made to be an anti-control deck, so it makes sense. but with the addition of all his anti-control tools, he kind of didn't have as much room.
Yeah.
In the standard version of this, you used to see a lot of mind control techs as well, which also helped in this kind of matchup. Or Pyromancer, neither of which he has. The Lightning Storms are obviously replaced by Maelstrom Pearls, which is fine. But maybe just going up to like more AoE, like maybe adding both of them in your deck would have been good in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you take out. There's a copy of Evolve. Maybe he definitely doesn't need that matchup. Take that out. Maybe you take out the Spirit of the Frog and just really cram in the removal. But obviously, Player 671 wasn't, I would say, expecting as much aggression as there is in this tournament. Otherwise, I don't think you ever bring a Shudderwalk Shaman that looks like this. Shudderwalk Shaman with Pyromancers, with Lightning Storms actually can be a really effective anti-aggro deck, but it needs to be pretty much entirely an anti-aggro deck with just then the necessary combo pieces. So that is going to tie up our series 1-1. Player 671 having found a win with his Priest, and Longer now having found a win with the Odd Paladin. We are going to go to a short break, and when we come back, we are going to get into game number 3. Don't go anywhere. We are tied 1-1 here between Player 671 and Longer in our third quarterfinal match of the 2019 Wild Open Finals. And now we are going to be seeing Player 671 still trying to find a win with that Shudderwalk Shaman, but he also has his aggro Mage deck as well. For Longer, we have the one and only Reno deck in the tournament, a Reno Priest, and then we have an Even Shaman, which is something that we've seen quite a bit of, and we've actually seen it suffer from the loss of Flametongue Totem, I think maybe a little bit more than we expected. Rogue has certainly taken a hit. Not a lot of Rogue in this tournament, probably because Cold Blood was nerfed to 2 mana. But I was expecting to see less Shaman, because I think Flametongue Totem is just such an integral part of that deck.
Yeah, I kind of want to point out Longer's Priest here. I like how his Reno Priest doesn't actually have Mind Blast and Holy Smite. He actually took out some of the anti-control tools and just kind of turned it into a kind of a complete anti-aggro deck. He's even running Squashling here to, potentially just...
I love it.
I want to see the Brand Squashling combo.
That's awesome. I mean, that is so cool. We're going to get to see that hopefully in one of our next games. But here it is going to be the Shaman Mirror. Well, actually, not the Shaman Mirror. It is 2 Shamans, but it's Shutterwalk Shaman for Player671. And we just saw him have not the best time with this deck against the Odd Paladin from Longer, but this is going to be a much slower deck for Longer. Certainly it's going to hit harder than the Odd Paladin will, but it's going to take some time to get there. So maybe time that Player671 can use to find his hexes at the right time, to get those volcanoes, to get the combo pieces off. I think this is going to be a bit of a smoother ride for him, though this opening hand is not great.
Yeah, I agree with that analysis. This seems like a much better matchup for Player671 here. You have a lot of things that line up very well against Longer's deck, because hexes line up very good against, Flame Wreath, Faceless, Sea Giants. Volcano lines up pretty well with the slower openings. They're threatening less damage. You have a lot of 0-2s on Longer's side, things that don't require immediate attention, and then eventually when Longer builds up too much of a board, Volcano is still almost certainly going to be able to clear up enough, all the board as well. So
yeah, there is a certain scenario, though, where Player671 just can't deal with the board size. If Longer has some discounted Thing from Belows, if he gets a Sea Giant down on a turn, maybe there's a Flame Wreath Faceless on the board already, and then the Shutterwalk Shaman just can't play double Volcano or just doesn't have them, and then Longer will almost certainly win the game in one swing. But it does take some time to build up to that point. He does, however, have a beautiful opening hand. Coin Draenei Totem Carver into the Flame Wreath Faceless. I mean, this is perfect for beating down the Shutterwalk Shaman.
Yeah, that's one of the focus points in this matchup, is how Longer can build up a board that's greater than 15 health. That's probably, one of the biggest attention points in this matchup. If you notice Player671, he actually didn't even hero power in turn 2. He knows that he needs to prevent that 15 toughness build up from Longer, and most of the totems being 0-2s will hurt his chances of that. Life Drinker is a very good pickup because it's a minion that can attack. It's not a 0-2, so he can trade off this Life Drinker and then follow up with a Volcano. Definitely is possible that we see a Volcano here, because if he waits one more turn, he might go over the magic number.
Yeah, it is definitely possible. There's a very fine line that you need to walk here between too few stats on board for me to Volcano and too many stats on board for Volcano to actually clear. So if there is a way for Player671 to clear up enough that Longer couldn't play multiple Sea Giants next turn, then I think he will hold on to the Volcano here, because this isn't the most threatening board.
Yeah, exactly. One thing that Player671 might not count for is the possibility of, say, 2 Sea Giants at once. 2 Sea Giants is 16 health just with the Sea Giants. So if you can ever play 2 Sea Giants in the same turn, then
you're doing really well. No, he is just going to Volcano. I mean, there are advantages to this that aren't just that you clear the board. Obviously, you clear the board, that's great, but you're preventing now Sea Giants from being played. Longer can't just slam a Wind Fury onto the Draenei Totem Carver and hit face for 10. It's a really defensive play, and maybe there was a way that he could have saved Volcano to be a bit more effective later on, but it might have been too risky.
Yeah, I like this line. One thing I'm going to call attention here is the Spirit of the Frog here. So he has Healing Rain in his hand. If he plays the Healing Rain next turn, he's going to guarantee the Hex, and that's a extremely important interaction here, because Hex is an MVP in this kind of matchup, hexing 7/7s and 8/8s. Looks like he's gonna whiff off this Hex here. Oh, and Hex goes into Volcano. Actually, that's awesome. It
does, yeah. I love Spirit of the Frog. It's a card that we've not seen played nearly enough, I think, since Rastakan's Rumble came out. I was playing it in like a Snow Fury Giant Overload style of Shaman, but it just runs up the mana cost for spells perfectly. I mean, you go right from Devolve into Farsight or Healing Rain, into Hex, into Volcano, and then you suddenly have everything that you need. So unfortunately, that Spirit of the Frog's not going to stick, because Longer is going to remove it with the Maelstrom Portal. But Player671 now, I think, actually is rocking a really strong hand. He can prevent any spells that would be played from Longer. There's not much that he would want to play, but maybe a Wind Fury, he can go ahead and Loatheb that away. Hagatha just gets the value train rolling and starts to pick up maybe some more really powerful removal.
Yeah, I'm surprised to see no Hagatha here, because Hagatha into Volcano next turn can clear out most of Longer's options here, especially because Hagatha clears out all the 1/1s, so turns off a lot of the Sea Giants. This is a nice line because it also freezes the 8/8, so you don't take any damage. Looks like Player671 is pulling a very similar line. I think everything is going to be delayed by 1 turn. And one thing I really like about this over the alternate line that I suggested was that since he freezes the 8/8 Sea Giant, next turn he can play Hagatha and trade his Loatheb into the Sea Giant, actually perfectly clearing it off. And Longer actually only has 4 attack on board that's unfrozen, so 1 damage off from actually being able to trade off the Loatheb if he wants to just do a clean trade plus develop more minion line.
We're probably going to see the Lich King this turn. Oh, maybe not. Okay. Longer's actually going to partition out his resources a little bit more slowly than I would have thought. The Lich King is super clean here, but like you were saying, if there's a Hagatha, then suddenly the Lich King dies and Longer's left with the Sea Giant, whereas now he can play 3 threats instead of just playing 1.
This might have actually been a bit of a blunder by Player671. This has definitely gone over the Volcano threshold.
Oh, yeah.
As well as probably gone over the Hagatha threshold.
This is going to require at least 2 turns to clear. Next turn, Player671 can play Volcano and Ziliax. And with 9 power on board, Lich King puts it to 17, and that would be enough to clear.
Okay, so he's still fine.
He can Totem, too. That pesky 1-mana hero power. Well, yeah, now things might actually be really awkward for Player.
Does Player671 has to clear? So there's 10, 15, 19 health here, so 1 off from being able to clear with the Ziliax, especially if Lich King survives. Yeah, that's lucky.
I was gonna say the issue is if multiple minions survive, but you know what? You're happy to have a 7/1 on the other side of the board if the Lich King is gone.
Right.
And Player671 picks up Unstable Evolution from Hagatha, which he can use with Doppelgangster.
Oh, that's actually an amazing pickup.
That is sick. I mean, that's just a deck we used to play, actually.
That's a deck. Yeah.
That's just a deck. Wow. I mean, Longer's got a really nice turn here, too, though, with Aya Blackpaw and the Shredder.
Yeah. Player671's going to have 24 life after this turn.
If he wants to save the Draenei, he can just Death Coil
the
Ziliax.
This Death Coil pushes so much damage, so it's... actually, that changes a lot, because now with this line, Player671, if he goes for a Doppel plus Unstable, he's going to rely somewhat on RNG here. If he doesn't pick up the taunts or charge minions to clear out the board, that's a card. I want to see. Okay, I don't know what's going to happen. Something's going to happen here. Something big is going to happen.
Okay, well, Rathion has Taunt.
Okay, so 1 taunt. It's going to trying to find more taunts of chargers. Oh, that's
Hexlord Malacrass is not what he was looking for, and there's a really good chance that Player671 is just going to die this turn. Bewitched Guardian is 1. He's still dead. But you know what? It was a really good try by the Bewitched Guardian. Yeah, that was really close. It looked like Player was almost able to stabilize there, especially with the Volcano and Ziliax clearing up the Lich King on the previous turn, but I think not taking the opportunity to Hagatha was a little bit inconsistent with the way that he'd played the game prior. He Volcanoed early to prevent those Sea Giants from coming down, and then he went ahead and played the Loatheb and just sort of left a bunch of small stuff on the board and really set himself up for failure if there was Sea Giant on the other side. So he got quite punished there, and ultimately that ended up winning the game for Longer, but it was pretty close.
Yeah. His line was certainly reasonable. There was a lot of good things going for him with his line as well, with the 5/5 lining up so good against the Sea Giant for Hagatha, and the fact that Longer already shown one Sea Giant, so a little bit more unlikely from that the second one.
Yeah.
But in the end, it didn't pay off. Longer had the right cards, 2 big minions to punish that line, and just the tempo allowed Longer to just ride into victory. It was basically just enough to get in enough damage. So. Well played by both sides, I think, still. I don't fault any line there.
Yeah, but now we've got just the Reno Priest left for Longer, and he's going to have to go up against that Shutterwalk Shaman with the Reno Priest and also the aggressive Mage from Player. So I think this is definitely the best opportunity for Player to get this Shutterwalk Shaman through. Reno Priest is probably a lot more of what he was looking to face when he put this deck into his lineup. It's slower. It's going to be a little bit more inconsistent. It's not going to be putting on much damage until it gets, Shadow Reaper Anduin and Raza up, and then it can find Spawn of Shadows, and then it can kill you. But that takes, maybe 10 turns.
Yeah.
That's more than enough time for Player to be able to get his combo up.
I want to call attention to Longer's Priest here, because Longer's Arena Priest is actually a lot more defensive than most Arena Priests are, and that's going to hurt him a lot in this matchup. You almost never see Arena Priest not running Mind Blast. That's just unheard of. And he's not even running Smite, so he's cutting a lot of damage here to turn Arena Priest into more of an anti-aggro deck. It's certainly the right call as far as this tournament goes. Most players here are bringing predominantly aggro decks left over, so we'll have to see how he does against this Shutterwalk Shaman being a little bit slower. He has the Spawn of Shadows, which is his only big source of burst already in his hand, but he can't really play that card until he gets everything else set up. So.
Yeah, the Reno Priest win condition is pretty much the Razakis Priest win condition. Obviously, Raza doesn't set your hero power to 0 anymore, but you still have so much cheap stuff. And with Spawn of Shadows, you're dealing an additional 4 damage for every hero power, so you could burst your opponent down from those really high life totals if you have Anduin and Raza and Spawn of Shadows. But again, these are a bunch of combo pieces that you need to assemble. And if Longer doesn't have, Kazakis in the early game, if he doesn't have Emperor Tharasan or necessary removal, he doesn't really even have a lot of pressure in the deck. He's not going to be doing a whole lot with his minions this game. He's playing a super reactive version of this Priest.
Longer was thinking about playing out his brand here, so next turn he can go Colite Oracle. This is certainly how I've seen Sintul lose with Shutterwalk Shaman.
Many times.
Player671 doesn't actually have the Shutterwalk in his hand, and Longer actually has this brand Colite play. He looks like he's deciding to save it potentially for turn 6. So we have to see if Player671 is actually just going to lose the Shutterwalk. It's certainly possible. It's a hard thing to play around. You might just play around, a 2-card draw from Colite Oracle and not necessarily a brand Colite combo, which is much harder to, anticipate. So
there is also Dirty Rat in the deck for Longer, so if he wants to save Bran and Cold Light for a super turn where he brands and Cold Lights and Dirty Rats to make sure he pulls 2 cards and maximizes his chance of hitting combo pieces, then we could be looking at this deck turning into a disruption deck instead of a burn deck.
Yeah, in the right way for Longer to play is probably a combination of both. He kind of has to see, which of these options is the best here. I would be surprised if he doesn't do it. Wow, he's not, because let's see, there's 7 cards. How many cards do you burn with Brand?
He'd burn 2.
Colite? You burn 2, and you also get to draw 4 yourself, which is quite a lot of fuel here.
Yeah, his hand's not great right now.
Yeah.
Too reactive.
Yeah, looks like he might even just be saving it for the Dirty Rat as well. Doppelgangster is pretty scary to leave up. Player671 has 1 copy of Evolve. I wonder if Grumble can do anything here. It's certainly a lot of value, but it's too slow, I think.
Yeah, he's going to fill up his hand and potentially risk burning the Shutterwalk. You don't want to do that. But if he can Grumble next turn, then suddenly you're putting so many Doppelgangsters into the pool that it's really unlikely that your Shutterwalk actually activates in the wrong order when the time comes.
Oh wow! Now Longer picks up Bran Kazakis, and is that the trigger where he goes ahead and no, he's not even playing, not even for Kazakis.
I think it's a bit of a bait, Strife. Yeah. I think Bran Kazakis is the direction you want to go with this deck in pretty much every other matchup, but here he's got to hold on to that Bran for the Dirty Rat.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like this line. You only get one extra potion with this line, whereas saving Bran for later, he can kind of copy both the Cold Light and Dirty Rat, things like that. There's a little bit of anti-synergy with Bran, Cold Light, Dirty Rat because you're effectively pulling a minion out of their hand so they don't burn another card on their draw after you fill up their hand with Cold Light Oracle. But like the upsides is probably still too much. And actually, Player671's filling up his hand here a little bit. He has 8 cards here in hand.
He bounced the Zola instead of bouncing the Doppelgangster. I think it's fine. I don't necessarily know that I would have done that because he could have just played the Doppelgangster down immediately and maybe applied some more minion pressure. But the Zola is the more flexible resource.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a really good pickup by Longer here. The perfect time for Shadow Reaper is always turn 8, especially when your opponent has a 7/7. So.
Oh yeah.
Now Player671's under pressure here to get his own proactive play going. That kind of starts with having a Shudderwalk in his hand and playing out things like Life Drinker, Lotheb, and this kind of.
The Lotheb in this matchup is so good because you're really worried that your Shudderwalk is going to get Psychic Screamed or Mass Hysteria or Light Bombed, especially if you don't have the Life Drinker in the pool and you can't just immediately deal damage to your opponent. But Lotheb makes it so that board presence with Shudderwalk is actually a win condition.
Yeah. This is nice here, Longer, putting a little bit of pressure, clearing out the board. Keep in mind, Longer actually has the Spawn of Shadows in his hand, so let's see. Longer can actually pull up a surprising amount of damage even next turn. Spawn of Shadows, how many pure powers can you play with it? Just seems like just one right now. Yeah, he needs an Emperor, right?
Well, usually, yeah, you want the Emperor, but also usually you're playing Spawn of Shadows with Mind Blast, and you're playing Spawn of Shadows with Holy Smite, 2 cards which Longer does not have in the deck. It looks like he may be pulling the trigger on the Bran Cold Light this turn.
Player671 still could lose his Shudderwalk here.
He's gonna overdraw 1 card from the Bran Cold Light and 1 card on his natural draw. Okay, Evolve is fine.
Player671 is sweating right now because he doesn't have it.
I know.
There's one more draw.
It's that 1 card off the top of the deck.
Is that a Seance?
Yes.
So Longer could have even done something like seancing the Colite or something. I don't know. It's so weird. You have so many options with this Arena Priest, especially in this matchup. You have the burn option, you have the damage option, you have the way to burn the Shudderwalk. I
would have been really tempted to seance the Bran there.
Yeah.
I think the part of the reason Longer wasn't playing the Bran early on was he wanted to save it for the best possible time to overdraw Player671, or he wanted to save it for the Dirty Rat. If you can seance your Bran and get it back, like, seancing a Reno Jackson isn't going to win the game for Longer this time. He needs those disruption tools. And he still does have access to Dirty Rat later on, but he could have made it a little bit more consistent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Reno's actually pretty useless in this matchup if you think about it. Once Sharrock gets going, it's more like an infinite thing rather than something that they're grinding down your life slowly.
You're not taking damage until you're dead.
Yeah.
Pretty much, at least.
It's hard for, it's kind of like the caster thing because we know that Player671 doesn't have Shudderwalk in his hand, but for all Longer knows, it's possible that Player671 is already just sitting there with the Shudderwalk in his hand.
That's true.
So
he could think it's going to be played this turn for all he knows. He's seen Doppelgangster, he's seen Life Drinker, he's seen Grumble.
Oh.
And there's the Shudderwalk.
There he is. And Player671 is ready to go. This isn't just the Shudderwalk. This is a Shudderwalk that's all ready to go.
And he even can dump his hand enough so that he can play the Shudderwalk. And part of the reason he wanted to pull back the Zola with the Grumble is so that he guarantees a second Shudderwalk. So he can Zola the Shudderwalk on the next turn and guaranteed have a second chance if it fails the first time around.
Oh, this is a huge pickup. This is Longer's actually only chance to win because Player671 is all ready to go at Shudderwalk. Longer is certainly on maybe a 2-turn clock here at most. Once the Shudderwalk is returned to Player671's hand as a 1-mana Shudderwalk, the next turn you're pretty much dead.
But Player671 can't go above 30.
Exactly, and now he has a Spawn of Shadows for 3 mana, a Seance for Seance on Spawn of Shadows, but it comes back to your hand.
Yeah, you'd have to play it again.
Yeah.
And, well, the Spawn of Shadows is hurting Longer as well. So if, maybe if he doesn't have lethal this turn, he can't go about it next turn. This is pretty much his only opportunity here.
Yeah, Longer needs to win this turn. The question is if he can do 20s, 30 damage in one turn with the Spawn of Shadows.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And you need a life advantage over your opponent, or else it'll kill you. And that's not necessarily true. You get a little bit of, extra damage.
Yeah, you're not taking the 2. But also, Raza hasn't been played yet, so the hero power still costs the full 2 mana.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you definitely can deal 30 damage in a turn with Spawn of Shadows in this deck, but you need Raza.
Yeah. This is looking bad then. This 1 mana Shudderwalk is probably going to end the game here. Let's see what happens. It's still RNG.
That he hits a Zola first instead of a Grumbled, but it looks like he is going to get the 1 mana back.
Yeah, got it back. So if you cast 10 Shudderwalks this turn, it's lethal.
Yeah, with only the 1 life drinker in the pool.
Oh, interesting. Player671 didn't play another 1 mana Shudderwalk. He decided... Was there some risk in him doing that?
He played a 9 mana.
Yeah.
I think maybe he just wanted to guarantee that he has a 1 mana Shudderwalk for next turn, so he can play 2.
Right.
And also there is just a chance that he wins the game with the Shudderwalks on board.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think there's a chance where you fill up your hand a little bit too much if, say, Zola activates first and you have 9 cards in your hand. That way you can't get the Grumble, the Grumble ones going.
With 3 9-cost Shudderwalks in hand, you're drawing a card naturally as well. Then, suddenly things can get a little bit messy.
Yeah, Player671 needs to find a way to dump his low-cost cards out of his hand so he can just go for an OTK, like a guaranteed-ish OTK.
The issue with that is he doesn't really have cheap spells to play, and every minion he plays puts an additional spell in his hand.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, maybe he's just going to keep going for 2 Shudderwalks every turn.
The slow and steady way, but it's still a way you can pretty much guarantee a win, as long as Longer doesn't have his Raza played yet. Even if Longer picks up Raza, if Player671 keeps chipping at Longer's life, then it's quite likely that Spawn of Shadows kills Longer before Player671 as well. So.
Yeah. And Player is going for the 1 mana Shudderwalk here first, because if he gets 3 1 mana Shudderwalks, then he does kill the Doomsayer. And then he can actually, hopefully, keep a board of Shudderwalks live.
Yeah. This is always the funnest part of watching these games is when the Shudderwalks start popping off. Player671 actually picks up I think he picked up a second copy of Life Drinker even at some point. Yeah. Oh no, those are just never mind.
It's just a lot of Shudderwalk in action. And he actually is, I think, just going to be able to... Well, there'll be Healing Rain, so he can't play the 10 this turn. But he can play 3 more.
See, this is the part of the game where I just kind of stop thinking. I just kind of click all the 1 mana Shudderwalk to see what happens.
If he hadn't played the Healing Rain, there was a chance that Hagatha would have killed the Shudderwalks and then Grumble would have activated, and he wouldn't have gotten more 1 mana Shudderwalks. So he could have killed Longer this turn, but it wasn't guaranteed, and he knows that Longer can't kill him, so it's better to just play safe.
Honestly, like, the Shudderwalk interaction Hearthstone is actually the most confusing thing I've ever had trouble with in Hearthstone. Like, this card is giving me so much headaches. Like, I really like to think about all the options and play perfect and maximize the chances, but, like, when I play Shudderwalk, it's like, sometimes I just give up. I don't know what's going on.
I did not buy into the Shudderwalk hype when it first came out, when like Disguised Toast was trying to break the game with it. But then a couple months in, I started trying it out. It really is an incredibly fun deck to play if everything goes right for you. And if everything goes wrong, not so fun. But he seanced the Shudderwalk, and that does activate Reno Jackson. So Longer goes back up to 30, and now we're going to be starting the chain again, seeing if Player671 can get those 1 mana Shudderwalks in hand. But he's just plagued by that Zola that he played early on.
It failed. There's no more 1-mana Shudderwalk, but there's 3, 4, 9-mana Shudderwalks, so...
Well, Longer can play Raza this turn. And he can also Shadow or Death the Shudderwalks. There's no guarantee that player gets 1-mana Shudderwalks back. There is also the chance that Hagatha kills the Shudderwalk. This card is really confusing at times. But the point I'm trying to get at is, can Longer actually set up to close out the game now on the next turn? I don't think he has enough cheap stuff, but he does have the 1-mana hero power, so he's certainly getting closer.
Yeah. Longer needs to try to save cheap spells somehow while, having a life lead. And the life lead part is kind of the hardest part, I feel, because Player671's always getting... it's not happening.
Oh my god! 3 9-mana Shudderwalks and a Rain of Toads. That's not how you win the game.
Can Longer go for a tie? I mean, even a tie is a good result at this point.
Oh, he would be very happy with a tie here, because this game looked like it was all but lost.
Yeah.
I don't actually know the current rule for ties.
It has to be a remake,
It has to be
right?
a regame.
Yeah.
There's the second Life Drinker gone. So we're going to see another Shudderwalk.
Yeah, Life Drinker would have been good to just, make each Shudderwalk heal him for 6 and do 6 damage. That would have been great to not burn.
This could have maybe even just been a turn for player to maybe just drop the Excavated Evil or play the Antique Healbot and the Life Drinker.
Yeah.
I don't know. He doesn't really have a way to lower his hand size enough for him to guarantee infinite Shudderwalks.
Right.
But it looks like he is kind of scared.
Yeah. I wonder what the purpose of this one is, though, because just playing Shudderwalk would have... Actually, no. If he got unlucky again, he would have only been able to play 1 in turn.
Could have gone to 24.
Yeah.
But now he has the Antique Healbot in his pool, so every Shudderwalk's going to be healing him for 11.
Yeah. That's true. No Lothab, huh? Lothab instantly locks out the game.
Yes, it does. Lothab is just the nuts against pretty much every priest deck.
Yeah.
Priests and warlocks have a very hard time once you get that on.
Yeah. What do you think of Mass Hysteria in Wild? Because I've played a lot with this card in both Standard and Wild. I kind of had mixed feelings about the card in different formats. I was just wondering what you thought about that.
I think I prefer Light Bomb in a lot of cases, and I don't know that there's always room for 2 Mass Hysterias and 2 Light Bombs and 2 Psychic Screams. It's almost like there's a bit too much of a good thing in Priest and Wild.
That's true. Priest just has so much removal.
Yeah.
You have the option of loading up your deck with pretty much as much removal as you want, but at the end of the day, you need ways to win and do your own thing, so...
Okay, so player actually opted not to play the Shudderwalk this turn because now he's seen a couple different removal pieces, and it just had to pull the 1-mana Shudderwalk. What a jerk. He wanted to keep a board in play, and there was a chance if he played the 1-mana Shudderwalk that Hagatha would activate, and then it would spawn stuff, and then Grumble would activate, and then there would be no Shudderwalks on board.
Yeah.
So here we go again.
Player671 is actually starting to be in fatigue now. Does that matter? Is that even potentially a good thing for Player671? Because now he doesn't draw the card every turn to fill up his hand. Makes it slightly easier to get 1-mana Shudderwalks.
I think it kind of doesn't matter because Player671 is going to pass the turn at 30 pretty much every time.
Right.
Unless we go, several more turns into this and he still can't hit a 1-mana Shudderwalk before Zola activates, and then the fatigue actually starts to deal the relevant damage, but he's healing for 11 with a single Shudderwalk.
Yeah.
I'm
just wondering, how is Longer still not dead? This is like the 30th Shudderwalk.
Yeah.
How is he not dead?
Yep. Well, 2 Reno Jacksons certainly helped. Priest of the Feast is gonna get him a little bit further here.
Yeah.
That seance onto Shudderwalk was something.
I think at the end of the day, Longer is just delaying the inevitable, though. He's not getting enough done. Eventually, he's going to get run over by Shudderwalks or Life Drinker, just activation. He's kind of wary to Psychic Scream because it's shuffling more cards into player's deck. I feel like maybe one...
Why? He just wants to see Grumble. That's it. Doppelgangster and then Grumble. And Zola can be last every time.
Oh, there's my favorite card. At
Squashling.
Squashling.
5. I mean, he's got a lot of cheap stuff now. The Cleric, the Power Word Shield, the Spawn of Shadows.
It's just not 30.
No.
It's not without Mind Blast and Smite and stuff.
Yeah. And now Longer's in Fatigue, and this damage is actually going to stick.
He just has no way to keep up with infinite Shadowwalks. Eventually, you run out of stuff. This is similar to what happens with Control War. Sometimes, maybe you can survive quite a long time, maybe even a long time like this, but you can't survive forever.
Mm-mm.
And eventually, Shadowwalk always win. They always get the last laugh. Here's the squash. I like this. This is such a cool interaction.
Yeah, it actually is really neat.
Yeah.
Still not more than 11 damage, though. Player is going to go back up to 30. And he would love to be able to play 2 Shutterwalks this turn. He's not a picky person. Just 2 Shutterwalks.
What are the odds he never hits 2? Like, it's so weird. He got Zola first again.
Zola has activated before Grumble the last 6 times? Maybe more? Yeah. And the Dirty Rat just had to pull the 1-mana Shutterwalk. I mean, Longer has to Psychic Scream the Shutterwalk.
He does.
Or he's dead.
Yeah, he's just gonna die. He's giving up.
Yeah. Alright, well, it was a bit of an unconventional game. Neither player really doing exactly what they wanted to do, but you know what? Player671 got there. Eventually.
I want to see how much damage this is. Just, I haven't bothered doing the math, but it looks like it's... I mean, it's obviously not enough.
Longer could have dealt the necessary 6 damage to kill himself.
Yeah.
All right, Player671 is going to tie things up, and that means our final matchup is going to be Player671's Aggro Mage versus Longer's Reno Priest. And this one is going to come down to how much life gain can Longer find? Can he find Reno at the right time? Can he get Greater Healing Potion? How good is his Kazakus? It is potentially a very tough matchup for the Reno Priest, but also setting yourself back up to 30 after the Mage has used Fireball or after the Mage has run themselves out of resources if they don't have Alaneth is a really good way to win the game. The Mage just can't deal that much damage sometimes if they've used enough of their resources already.
Yeah, this feels like a very swingy matchup, right? That's kind of always the reality of playing Reno deck against aggro. It's so good if you can find the right cards, where you can heal for 30, and if you don't, oftentimes you're left with a bunch of inconsistent, squabbling jibber jabber.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. I think one of the other key parts of this matchup is whether Longer is going to find answers to deal with the minions early, because you can out heal burn as much as you want, but at the end of the day you need a way to clear out the minions to stop the repetitive damage, and it can be quite hard through things like Counterspell and the explosiveness of Mage with Cabal Crystal Runners. Yeah,
I mean, the Crystal Runners and the Kirin Tor Mages early on can actually just be really difficult for the Priest to deal with. So we're going to find out, will it be Player671 or will it be Longer who takes game number 5 and takes the series, sending themselves into the semifinals? We're going to a short break, but we'll be right back. We are going to game number 5 in our third quarterfinal of the day between Player671 and Longer. Now, Player only has his aggro mage left. Longer has that Reno priest deck, and you were saying this is a super swingy matchup. Probably going to be pretty decisive either way. Either Player has all of the early game and the burn he needs, and Longer can't keep up, or Longer finds that Reno Jackson at the right time, and Player just doesn't have the damage.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I'm looking forward to a nice, short, fast, honest game after.
That last one was hard to watch. Hard to watch. Usually, you know, if everything goes right with Shutterwalk, if they have all the pieces and they don't whiff, usually it's like 2 or 3 turns and the game's over. But that one was just Zola after Zola after Zola with only one life drinker in the pool, and it was kind of sad.
Especially against Priest, right? Because they're going Reno. He played 2 Renos that game, so
yeah.
Must have healed for like 80 health.
It was a lot. It was a lot. But, you know, I think that speaks to Longer's deck building choice. I do think that his choice to make his Reno Priest very anti-aggro and take out like Mind Blast and Holy Smite was correct for this tournament. It is just unfortunate that he ran into a matchup where that ultimately did not help his chances against the Shutterwalk Shaman. So it is going to be the aggro mage for Player671 and Longer on the Reno Priest here.
On the plus side, those tech choices should be incredibly good in this matchup. It's actually perfect to have like things like Squashling against Burn Mage. So we'll see how it does. At the end of the day, it's still very much based on some of the other factors. Still, we'll see. Doomsayer, huge pickup actually in this matchup.
Player did find the Alaneth on the draw. And that is going to be really necessary here to keep up with the level of life gain that Longer can do and to be able to find the necessary burn resources.
Yeah. Burn Mage, or this kind of, Burn Mage is actually one of the best aggro decks against slower decks because it's just kind of able to go over the top of controlled decks. Most controlled decks, once you take over the board against an aggro deck, there's not that much damage coming in, especially once you get some taunts rolling. Mage can do so much damage even after board state has been, kind of ended on their part, especially with cards like Alaneth. Longer doesn't have any weapon destruction in his list at all, so this Alaneth is pretty much going to guarantee that this game is going to go pretty explosive one way or another.
Yeah, probably going to go the distance. Either Player is able to kill Longer or Player decks himself out of all of his cards.
It's very fast.
That's pretty much the way Alaneth works.
You deck yourself out actually pretty fast. I believe you have like 5-6 turns after Alaneth before you're done.
You get to hear Matt Mercer's sweet voice the whole time, but eventually you just don't have anything left in the tank.
And then you die very fast. Alaneth starts to blow yourself up. Oh, not being able to deal with this Stargazer is a bit awkward.
Yeah, I would love to have had a Shadowward Pain here.
Honestly, though, it doesn't matter too much at the end of the day because we know Player671 actually has Alaneth. Card draw isn't really what he's lacking to begin with, so maybe we see some lines where Player671 holds off on the Alaneth for a while because he has so much card draw already. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's possibly he doesn't have to play it on turn 6.
Yeah, unfortunately for Player671, there's not many minions he has either, so.
That's a great draw.
Yeah.
Going to be able to weave in all of those hero powers and with the Priest of the Feast and Power Word Shield in hand as well. This is still not looking bad for Longer. He's going to have a fair amount of time to be able to pick up Reno.
Yeah. Too bad there's this Raza got nerfed. You used to be able to turn your hero power to 0. You used to be able to just heal immediately. Now you don't get the heal off on turn 5 when you play it.
It was one of the craziest decks I've ever played. Like Grim Patron, Razakis Priest, Handlock, those are all up there as like the highest power level decks in Hearthstone history.
Yeah. I want to. Oh yeah, exactly. He has the Coal at Oracle. This is actually a nice counter to Alaneth because you can burn some value. Oh, and burn the Forgotten Torch. It's actually probably the best card to burn. Forgotten Torch effectively is 9 damage for one card. Fireball is only 6 damage for a card. So that's a nice burn by Longer here.
Yeah, a little bit of a punish for sure. He could even Seance the Cold Light and pick it back up, but I think he'd much rather save that Seance for Priest of the Feast or for Reno Jackson.
Yeah, Longer's holding off on using this powered shield coin, things like that, because he wants to heal as much as possible with this Priest of Feast. So Longer's definitely preparing for the long game with Alaneth. So wants to make the most out of it.
He hasn't taken the damage yet, really, and players going into turn 7. So the fact that Longer is still at 30 and has as much life gain in hand as he does is pretty telling of how this game's gone so far.
Right. One of the key points of this matchup is board control. You know, oftentimes you're not going to have enough damage as the mage with just burn. You're going to need to have board, and oftentimes board has to come early because, you know, late game there's things like Excavate, Evil, Light Bomb, all these, you know, even Psychic Scream that that can clear out your board. I'm not sure if Player671 actually had the mana to develop a counter spell that turn. Definitely would have liked that one, although Longer has a coin, so...
I think that Counterspell has been up since the first secret that he played, I want to say. And that second secret is Explosive Runes, I think.
At least the coin is gone. The next Counterspell timing for Player671 is going to be a key part of this game. Player671 needs to find a turn where he can play multiple minions in the same turn, backed up by a Counterspell, which might give Longer some trouble. Longer does actually even have the counter to it, but it's something that, you know, they're both thinking about.
And we did see player burned a Cabal Crystal Runner. That is actually just the biggest minion in the deck. So the fact that he's not going to be able to get those out for free and maybe put in some chip damage with them is actually pretty detrimental for him. He's having a really hard time getting any of this damage to stick.
Yeah, Player671 doesn't have any spell damage in his deck. It would have been a good, you know, thing to time with your Ice Lances and Frost Bolts because they're the cheapest spells. But looks like, you know, it's just all quantity basically.
Ooh, Lotheb plus Cabal Crystal Runner to back it up though.
Ah,
that's gonna be
hurts.
great. And the Priest of the Feast used to soak up the Explosive Runes. I don't think that's what Longer wanted there.
Yeah, I wonder why he did that one to soak up Explosive Runes. You know, he could have played the Stonehill, which would have been perfect. You only take 2 damage through Explosive Runes, and you get to keep that Priest of the Feast alive, especially with Seance. This might have been a big blunder by Longer.
Maybe he thought it was Ice Block, I guess?
Another secret is Potion of Polymorph, which also is not great, you know, for you to get your Priest of the Feast Polymorph.
Regardless, you want to play that Stonehill first so you can keep Priest of the Feast on the board, or even just not necessarily play Priest of the Feast that turn. Either way, wow, what a draw there.
This is actually the perfect time for Shadow Reaper.
Oh my goodness.
Right after you get Lotheb, you can't clear this board with spells, and there's 2 5/5s on board for the Shadow Reaper. This is actually huge.
He's got the mana to kill off the Arcanologist as well. That was such a necessary draw for Longer.
We need to see how many cards does Player671 have left. He's almost empty. His gas tank is getting there.
It's running dry. I think he's got maybe 2 or 3 cards left at most.
Yeah.
He's going to be able to put a Fireball back in the deck with the Forgotten Torch. And Longer cannot heal with the hero power, at least. He can Spirit Lash for a little bit of life gain. It was just 2 cards left.
Yeah, Blood Mage
Wow.
Spirit Lash is actually one of Longer's big things that he has left going for him. Blood Mage Spirit Lash can heal for, you know, 10 to 12 life fairly easily sometimes. Even this board is 8 health and clears off all of the board. He just needs to play around the secrets first.
There's 2 Explosive Runes in the deck, but I believe one was burned, so he can know that it's Counterspell, Potion of Polymorph, and Ice Block.
Looks like a Light Bomb here to clear out. Oh, okay, there's the Lash. I thought he was going to save that with the Blood Mage. Would have got more healing, but...
Yeah, I guess.
At the end of the day, if he clears out the board, then there's nothing else to use Spirit Lash on. So it was still a correct play.
Okay, now Player671 is taking 12 damage at the end of his turn, plus another 6 on the draw.
I don't think he even has enough damage, just mathematically. This Fireball plus ping here. So next turn there's Frostbolt, Torch.
He has 10 damage. Longer's at 13. He's going to be taking 18 damage.
Yeah.
He's dead at the end of his turn. He cannot win the game. Longer is going to take this series in game number 5. That was an incredibly back and forth match, and honestly, not one that I expected Longer to win in that final game. I thought that the Mage was pretty handily going to take that, but when he doesn't have Kirin Tor Mage early on, when it doesn't have Cabal Crystal Runner, then suddenly the Mage is really lacking that necessary chip damage to actually be able to close out the game with those fireballs that it generates from Forgotten Torch and with the cards that it hits off of Alaneth. So you can draw through your entire deck, but eventually that clock is gonna hit midnight and you're not gonna be able to actually kill your opponent. So Longer is gonna make it 2 for 2 for China, qualifying through to the semifinals, and he's gonna be playing against the winner of our final quarterfinal